My hair is still slightly damp. I don't care. Hello people of the world, my name is Masood and welcome back to my channel. Welcome if you're here for the first time. I'm a writer, I'm a reader, I'm a science fiction and fantasy junkie, so if you're into that kind of stuff, go ahead and hit subscribe. Today's a very special kind of video. I'm a part of a blog tour for More Than Just a Pretty Face by Syed M. Masood, organized by Here Are Voices Blog Tours. So this is a huge shout out to them. They are an amazing blog tour company. Make sure that you check them out. I have the blog tour schedule mentioned in my link description below. More Than Just a Pretty Face is out on the 4th of August. So what are you waiting for? Go ahead and pre-order the book right now. Actually, not right now. Wait, watch my video and then go. I'm also going to link my blog posts for this blog tour, and I've done a playlist as well as an own voices reflection. All links are down in the description below. More Than Just a Pretty Face is about this boy called Daniel Jilani and the ups and downs in his life after his parents decide that he needs to get married even though he's just 19. But according to some families, they try to get the kids either married or engaged a little early so that apparently they can avoid being in a relationship. So that is the kind of family that Daniel comes from. It follows his life and it is basically a rom-com. This review is of course going to be spoiler free because the book isn't out yet, so I'm going to try to be as non-spoilery as possible, yet try to give you the entire understanding of what the book was about. Now let's start with the characters. Daniel Jilani was a great character. I enjoyed reading him so much. It was such a fun ride to be in his mind because he was super cool. He was really funny. Voice was very Percy Jackson-y. I know that I shouldn't be comparing this book to Percy Jackson, but in terms of character, I felt like it was a little similar. That's probably because I've kind of grown up with Percy Jackson, and any guy who was like that, I just automatically go like,
oh, that's Percy, that's basically Percy.
Of course, there were lots of differences between the two. This guy, he is bad at sports, he is bad at pretty much everything. He doesn't study, he just has a really pretty face. He is extremely handsome. The boy knows how to flirt, and that is pretty much all he knows, except he also loves to cook and he wants to become a chef when he grows up. But he is hailing from a society, or society at large even, who does not especially Desi society. For some reason, a guy wanting to cook is looked down upon, and of course the whole stigma that if you're not a doctor, an engineer or a lawyer, or in some cases maybe a teacher, but that's not for boys, by the way. Being a teacher is only for girls, huh? You're not going to be able to make enough money in order to support your family, and that is the exact stigma that Daniel has to face in his day-to-day life, because this guy loves to cook. There is so much written about food in this book. It made my mouth water because you've got very typical Desi Muslim food. Of course, it's very easy to say that this is Indian food or this is South Asian food, but it's not that simple because different parts of South Asia, different parts of the subcontinent has different kinds of food, and this was a very Muslim based cuisine. So you had biryani, you had korma, you had keema and all that. You had kebabs, and you could see the culture shining through the food. And I love the fact that Daniel was so insistent. He literally did not give a shit about what people said. It did get to him from time to time. I did feel he was why is everybody after my life? But he did not stop doing what he loved despite everybody going tera kuch na hoga. Nothing is gonna come out of your life. But this guy still does it. He works at this French restaurant. So yeah, enough about Daniel's love about food, because I love Daniel's love about food, and I was so happy that it was treated with so much care and respect. I could tell that maybe even the author loves to cook or loves food, because the way it was described, the way Daniel just got lost in the process of cooking or in the process of eating, I was this is so good. Talking about being in Daniel's head, as I said, I found the voice really engaging, and I did not need any kind of adjustment in order to get inside his head or get used to his voice. It was very interesting. It was appealing almost instantly, especially if you're into that. He wasn't snarky within quotes because of how much people tend to have a snarky protagonist, but He was just funny and he managed to be lovable despite being snarky. He did not come off as an asshole, even though at times we were meant to see him as an asshole because he was like shallow and superficial, and both of them basically mean the same thing, but I wanted to add words, so there you go. This book as a whole was pretty funny. There were a couple of lines, like in the first 20 pages or so, I had already chuckled around 10 times. And this is saying something because I don't usually, I do enjoy reading books and I do appreciate humor from time to time, but sometimes it just feels very tacked on. It's like you're not being funny. This book actually made me laugh, and I mean laugh out loud a couple of times and smile in a lot of places. There were these certain lines which were really funny, like as individual lines, they were funny. When taken in context, they were funny. And a few of them, I admit, was like a little childish. But I still laughed because I have that kind of sense of humor. What can I do about it? The humor in this book would have been a 10. It was very close to being a 10 or a 9.5. But I ended up giving it an 8 because first of all, I thought that, as I said, at some point, it did feel a bit childish, even though I did enjoy it. I tried looking at it objectively, I guess. Subjectively, I enjoyed it. At some places, the humor could get a little offensive. Now, it does not happen very frequently, so keep that in mind. I think it was just one or two places, but again, I did keep that in mind while talking about or thinking about the humor. A couple of places it just felt forced. I mean, it would have done well if you just let the emotional impact of the scene be. Again, most scenes are done very well, and the frequency of these things happening were not very high, which is why I'm giving it an 8. Most books do not cross a 5 for me. I just had an overall really fun time reading this book. So, talking about on-the-nose humor, there were some on-the-nose dialogue. So, again, frequency was not that high, but it was worth mentioning, and hence I am. And speaking about on-the-nose in general, there was something that a lot of people I've seen have pointed out on Goodreads, and I felt so myself after reading that book, that some people were a bit like caricatures. Now, I'm going to put an asterisk over there, because even though they felt like caricatures, they were well done caricatures. I don't know how to explain this, but it felt like these caricatures, they were kind of, these people were stereotyped, but even then they managed to feel like they had a life of their own. I guess what I mean by when I say caricatures is because we've seen these kind of people before, these stereotypes before, so the characters ended up being predictable, but just because they were predictable did not mean that I didn't feel that they still had depth. So this was something that was there, but here were the cons and here were the pros. They did feel a bit like caricatures, but they also managed to have some depth. And it was mostly like that depth aspect was mostly because the book was like, the voice was so engaging and so much fun to read that perhaps I did not focus so much on how stereotyped the characters were. So I know that this was like a little muddled, but yeah, basically what I thought about it. So while we're on the subject of characters, let's talk about the side characters. Apart from Danyal, I really like Danyal. The only problem was that a couple of times got a little offensive, but overall I just really had a really fun time being in his head. Talking about Bisma, I connected a lot with her because number one, she was super into superheroes and she would always come up wearing like some kind of superhero t-shirt, and I was just like, bro, you're basically me. She was one of those people who did not feel like a caricature. I mean, Bisma and Danyal were well-written characters. I really enjoyed reading about them, and the love story that they shared was so good. It was a slow burn romance. I was so happy that their romance did not suddenly appear out of nowhere. The author gave them time, like they spent weeks together before developing feelings, and the way their feelings developed at the very get-go, there was a lot of respect and affection between them, but not in a romantic way. Everything that both of them spoke about, the other person really ended up respecting and understanding, and there was this trust that developed almost immediately in their relationship because of their dynamics, and then that did not lead to them falling in love. It happened slowly. It was a slow burn romance. and I loved it so much. And in the end, everything that ended up happening in the relationship, like the way everything transpired, it made me cry. Next are the parents. They were a bit caricature-y. Like, I've seen that kind of like parent stereotypes a million times before. Not saying that it did not work for this book, it did what it had to do within the story. Now there's this girl called Kaval. I think that's how you pronounce her name. I've never really come across that name, so I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing it. But I read it as Kaval or Kaval. So basically she is there and I'm just like, I did not like her because she was a character stereotype. Again, worked within the story, served the purpose within the story, but it would be nice to get a bit more depth from her character. Then come the friend, who are the more controversial parts of the story, because I've seen what other people have to say about them, and I did feel that Saurabh's character was a bit caricaturish. It's not to say that I haven't met people like that before, but I did think that his character was done a bit of a disservice by just giving him one stereotype that he had to kind of stick to throughout. I wish that wasn't the case. If his character was given more depth, this book was good. This book would have been even better. Now about the plot conflict, about the whole Renaissance man, it took a while for the book to kind of find its proper footing, because at first it just felt like a rom-com and I thought, okay, this is a bit Bollywood. I'm okay with that, but not that okay with that. And then a few pages in, we find out about this competition, and then things start getting serious when Daniel actually starts focusing on the competition and the whole history and the colonialism aspect. I loved it. I just wish that it did not feel so out of the blue and there were more cues given in the beginning of the book, because the first part of the book feels like a kind of a different book than not the first part. The first few pages, a few chapters of the book feel like a completely different book as the rest of the book. Of course, I enjoyed both and neither of them was bad, and the way it was done was not bad. I just wish it was better, because in the middle I did feel like, that came out of nowhere. Have I missed something out? Yeah, sometimes I did feel like Daniel was a bit too thick. Like there's this one part in which he doesn't recognize Einstein. I'm like, who does not recognize Einstein? Also, all the extras were also wise in the book. Like the chef was super wise, the librarian was super wise, everyone is just wise. Like a random character who doesn't really appear later on is suddenly spouting really wise advice, and I'm just like, are you okay? I didn't have a problem with that. It just felt like, as I said, are you okay? I did really like the chef, though the chef came across as a very likable character. So yeah, I think that is all I have to say about this book. Let me know what you think about the book. More about the own voices reflection in my blog post down below. Check it out. I have a playlist for this book. Check it out all down below. So that's all I got for you today. Hope you enjoyed this review. Give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to hit subscribe, and make sure that you follow me on Twitter, on Instagram, on my blog. All links are down below. See you. Bye.